All right, all you devils out there, happy Friday. Sam here with you on the 30th of April, Friday. Of course, we're going to look at Bitcoin. To all my members out there who know I've been dealing with a move this week, I appreciate your patience. I think we're finally in the new house. But again, I know I've been MIA all week just dealing with that. And my thanks to my team for picking up while I was just dealing with getting from one house to the next. So that said, it's interesting. I'm pretty much out of touch with the markets all week. Of course, keeping an eye on the majors. We left off last Friday, with two counts that were competing with one another, both valid. And I think here a week later, while certainly the bullish action today is encouraging, I don't think we're to the point yet to where we can disqualify either of these counts. So it's kind of an interesting spot that we're in here. So let's start here. This is the, I think this is probably the more agreed upon count, certainly amongst my team and many members and YouTube subs, that we did finish with an ending diagonal here. Now the question, I think, for all of us Elliotticians is, to what degree? What did we finish up here? Because there are just a number of ways you could count this. And until we get some resolution out of, you can kind of look at it this way. Until we get some resolution here, either we're going deeper, we're going to challenge this pivot. It's very difficult to get any certainty in terms of a forecast as to where we're headed, right? It could still go either way. I mean, there are a couple of things that we have to keep in mind, right? So the most bearish technical event, which I've referenced now for the last couple of weeks, and again, credit to Dave the Wave who pointed this out, is if we go back over to our weekly here, and again, you guys, I've been stressing this kind of as just a red flag. So I open this up a little bit here. So on the weekly here, now again, I'm in log scale, and this is the logarithmic. This is the LMACD, for anyone who has not caught this in the last couple of weeks. That cross here on the weekly remains negative, and then you can see the potential divergence here in the RSI here. You don't see it as much with the Elliott oscillators here, but certainly something that's very much like topping action here. This is significant, but this may be the more significant of the two, because that marked some significant tops in Bitcoin. Now, we certainly could cross back, right? Nothing says we must retrace all the way down to challenge 20K. Certainly, this would be a sign of relief for bulls to see that cross back over, right? So, but again, as I keep saying, again, I'm as bullish as anyone, but this continues to be something to be concerned about, right? So, see, it would be easy to just lean into, okay, well, top's in, and we're going to go down because the weekly MACD crossed, right? I don't. There is no one indicator that gives you that much certainty, but this is absolutely something we have to be mindful of. So as you're laying out roadmaps and potential scenarios here, this has to be in the back of your mind, right? That is definitely a negative for bulls. Right. So that said, while recognizing that, here I'm going to go back here to just kind of focus on the Elliott count and just the question marks that all of this. We can kind of do it that way. All of this is creating, right? You could even think of it, more in almost a Wyckoff approach. Is this reaccumulation or is this distribution? Well, we're not a lot of clues. We've got some volume somewhere here. There's here it is, right? So not a lot of clues in terms of volume. This is the alternate count here. Other than what we do see is that the high volume levels are when we're selling off, right? So that's all liquidation volume. Now today is interesting. It could be a bit of a little market manipulation here. There's a whole lot of options. I saw the number this morning. I think it's 3.5 or 6 billion in Bitcoin options are expiring today. And I think 54K was the maximum pain point. So the fact that we've rallied beyond that, would certainly be, I mean, it was those call buyers here, that's good for them. So the potential here is that this is a bullish development here, but per the Elliott count, the longer term count, the swing structure, the fib relationships, we can't quite eliminate the alternate count here. Well, I don't know. Both of them are valid. I don't know one's I don't know that I would classify one as a primary and one as an alternate. They're both very much in play here and very hard to distinguish until we get some more confirmation. So looking at this, again, is it distribution or accumulation? Right? So if you're a bull, right, obviously your bias would be, reaccumulation before the next leg up. If you're a bear and you're really focused on that weekly MACD, well, this could certainly be interpreted as distribution. Well, we shall see. So we got to look at both, and I'm going to start over here because there's nothing that has invalidated this count here. So if we've gone let's see, I've got to, let me redo this here. So if we've got this ending diagonal here, so we would have to do it, here we do it. I guess we do it this way. 4, we'll do the 5 that way. Here, let me get this down. A degree, we change that color. We can do pink. I don't do pink very often. All right, so if we're coming off of the, right, here's the low, COVID low, pardon me, here's the COVID low. So you can put that in the context here of here's the 19 bull run to the COVID low. So coming off of that, this can be interpreted a couple of different ways. So it's the 1-2, right? This continues to be the problem, right? Is the 1 here? Is it here? Where's the 1-2? Without more confirmation up here, we're not going to know until it's done, and we can work backwards. So right now, you've got to respect the possibility of both of these playing out. So thus, I keep emphasizing having multiple roadmaps, if you will, in terms of how to interpret what happens next. So you're prepared. So if it does this, well, I know what my actions will be. If it does that, then my actions will be different. But at least I'm not, caught unprepared. So is it 1-2, 1, right? This is always iffy, right? Elliotticians will differ here. I think it's a running flat, right? So 1, 2, 3, this is clearly the 4, right? It's the 4 at some degree. And then we can we can finish this thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. We end with the diagonal, completes the 5. Now, what did we complete here, right? Is it this 3? That would have to go up a degree. Is it this? Right, is it this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to complete the 3 relative to this 1, 2? Is it the larger 3 here, right? Which is you could get that count to play 1, 2. You've got the big 3 here relative to the COVID low as the 2. Is that our big 3? Could be. So, well, how do you know? Well, again, we're not going to know definitively until we get resolution out of this, certainly out of this zone that we're in here, this range between, let's call it 60 to 40. So I've got a 20K range here of uncertainty, which is frustrating, right? But it doesn't mean it's not tradable, but you're going to have to pick one side or the other and accept the risk that goes, pardon me, I shouldn't say that. I mean, one thought is just to not be trading here until you get some more clarity, right? On the assumption being, as I often distinguish between the long-term holding Bitcoin, you don't have to fuss with that, really. I don't think we're at an inflection point here where you'd have to be making decisions about longer-term expectations for Bitcoin. But for your trading Bitcoin, you got to pick a side here, right? Because there's certainly enough volatility to be profitable trading this. I'm still in that long from last week. So there's money to be made here, but it's not easy money. This is very tricky in here. So thus, since we can't eliminate any of these counts, we have to address them both and just keep an eye on both of them. I suppose if I had to bias it, that weekly MACD would have me more concerned about this being this top here of this 3 coming down for this 4 than the 3 relative to the COVID low. I don't think we're there yet. So I think what we could be working on here is the 4 relative to this 2. So thus you could see a path for this that might suggest something along these lines. Now I'm out here at enough distance to where, and I'm in log scale, so it looks smaller than it really is. But relative to this 2, well, let me say this. It would make sense, right? So that would, right? It doesn't kill the bull market off of the COVID low. It allows for a deeper retracement here down to the low 40s. We talked about this last week. Certainly a very valid roadmap here for any Elliottician. Not possible to eliminate this count or this alternate, if you will. You don't have enough here to really say, okay, I know where it's going. Well, I believe I have a sense of where the count is, right? So Elliotticians here, you're struggling because you can't be definitive. Even with the wave relationships that we went through last week, there's nothing here to help you, really. We haven't moved far enough. So you got to maintain this and then just be watching for where the next opportunity is. Now, me being a longer-term bull, this wouldn't affect me to the point to where if this ends up playing as a B, we come down here for a C, I'd be buying with both hands there. So I'm not really concerned about something much more significant coming down, into the 20s. And you do see people, there's a lot of chatter that Bitcoin is topped and Ethereum is going to overtake it. And, certainly I'm equally as bullish of Ethereum. But I don't think I'm not quite ready to suggest that Bitcoin and Ethereum are really just ready to switch places in terms of leader of the space. But it's just an interesting spot to be in. So, I'm 10 minutes in. I'm a lot of talk, and I'm not really making much progress here. So let's, with this count here established and recognizing this would likely be your primary, right, if we will. Now, again, question mark, what did we complete there? With that kind of teed up, well, of course, just looking for relationships, which you might look for. So if we're going to come back here, and I've talked about this as the 3-4 as a good alternate in a location here in terms of a retracement of the higher degree. If we come back to the prior 3-4, that would put us smack dab between the 23 and the 38, right? So this, you can see how that could play and not interrupt the bull at all, and just keep us in this kind of three-way corrective. Come back to this zone. That will be an interesting test if it comes just above 41, to come up and then take this to continue on. We would not distort to where we would be uncomfortable with the look of it. It would still feel like just a traditional impulse here, but just got a little tricky up here, right? No one said this was going to be easy. So as we sit here unable to qualify where we are definitively with the count, well, then it becomes a matter of, well, is there trading in here on the shorter term? Recognizing long-term can't be defined just yet. Well, certainly, right? So if we, let's stay on this for just a minute more. All right, so just looking at this. Now, when you break it down here and you're looking at a range here from, you could stay in log if you wanted, but it's just easy to come out here. You don't get that much of a difference here. The finish here is interesting because this looks so much like a 4, so we get the lower low here, so you can see the path to an impulse here that finishes, right? So we get a 5 to finish, and you get the classic. This is something, right, to be expected, right? So you get the classic stop runs here, which is why last week, as I said, it was too soon to move your stop on that, because it wasn't, this didn't look like a clean finish, and this looked I think it was right here last week when we finished. It looked like there was very much potential for one more push down, but there were a couple of technical events that we'll look at here when we switch over to the bullish count. So I'm still long here. This is the classic stop run, right? You see, this is FX 101, right? You see it all the time. So now, of course, it's always easy in hindsight, right? I understand that, right? So it's you see, they ran the stops and then run it up. It takes a little experience to know to look for that. But when it's happening there, this has to turn around pretty quickly, right? So because you're always concerned, like, okay, they're running the stops, right? They're running the stops. Are they still running the stops? There comes a point where you got to say, okay, I'm out, right? So you've got to have a stop on it. But to allow for that, as I will often say to my FX traders, right, the highest risk moment is when you first go into the market, because you're vulnerable to that. That still could go. That still could be a running flat. I digress. Okay, so still long here. Looking at this now, as we consider where we are in this relative count. Well, of course, here I'm just going to stay on this until we switch over. Obviously, the first thing we got to get through is the algo on this side. All right, so I think actually in the log scale, we're just coming up to it, but I'm going to stay out of log. So we come up here and touch this. This was prior resistance, a cluster in here. So let's get that all the way down on that pivot. Here's our little stop run. Reaction here at the 50. I saw that, right? It's very common, right? You see the algorithms will start to sell at the 50, right? You can see the cluster here was high, and I'm on visible range, but if we just looked at I mean, essentially what you're looking at is all of this, right? So within that, here's the point of control in terms of the volume profile. So we get a little reaction there, but today we're getting this bullish action. But again, I wouldn't read too much into that because of all those options expiring, right? So to hold it up above 54, this, right, good for call holders, but that would not surprise me at all, right? So you get up and they breathe a sigh of relief, and then we rip it down. So looking at that, you can kind of forecast this, say, okay, well, this is the next significant pivot, because once we break that, if I get this right on my high here, if we get right on that, if we break this, well, we lose the sell side resistance, right? You hear me say that all the time, right? We'll lose the algorithm that is sitting there waiting to sell that, right? They started here. You can see the reaction. They'll be sitting right here. If we break that, then we won't get another sell side. Here, let me take that off. If you follow me here, so if we can break that, we don't get another sell side until we see something deeper like this, right? So that's certainly possible. Now, if we come up here, now you'd have another one. Right, but if we just keep going here, then see if you see what I mean. Let me try and rephrase here. Members, you know what I mean here. All right, so if we break above, right, this break here, you think, oh, I'm in the clear. There's no sell side resistance here. Not quite, right? So even if we did this and we had a deeper retracement, now I got you again, right? So now they're there again, right? Oh, come here. Tell I've been moving for a week, right? So then we get them again. So I want to clarify here when I say, oh, no sell side resistance until we get a retrace deep enough to create one. And it doesn't have to be that deep, right? It could be smaller, right? You'll have one even if you saw something like this, right? As soon as you get a dip, they're going to be there waiting again, right? So sell side resistance always there as soon as there's enough distance here to create enough potential for that to be there for an algo to take that sell with the intention of bringing it down. Oh, God, plagues me right there. All right, so you've got that potential here, and then you can see it again. You might have it from this pivot. God, I'm rusty. 1 week is all it took. Excuse me. So then you'd have it here, right? So as soon as you get a pivot, then you're going to have it again, right? So now you got buy side competing against sell side, because you'd have it yet again. Jesus, come on. Here, right? And then you got them again, all right, going there. So just be mindful of that. Every time you get a pivot, if there's a little, even the tiniest little retracement, shit, that looks like a 618 right there, right? That looks like a little golden zone. So it's always going to be there. So I just want to make a point of clarifying, when I say you're in the clear temporarily, until there's a deep enough retracement. All right, I went long enough on that. Okay, so we sit here and we wait to see, how far this goes. Do we have an impulse here? It's not a great looking one, right? I mean, even if we zoom in there, could you dig one out of here? It looks to me like you'd have to do it as just a wicked extension in the one. Oh, you'd probably do it this way with a leading diag with a big extension in the one. I mean, it works, right? But it's not the count that you'd really want to bank on. I wouldn't trade overly aggressively. You get a little ABC here. Now, are we technical? Well, we're pretty shallow. If that's the 5, well, between 38 and the 50, right? It's not like it's unheard of, but that's not the start you'd hope to see. But again, does it mean I wouldn't continue to be bullish because I don't like this? No, of course not. There wasn't nothing here to add to, because I don't think that was far enough here to really say, oh, there's the 2, it's in. The only bit of tell you had here was all those options expiring, and then there's a gap in the futures that remains unfilled. Oh, I think it's got to get up to 60 to fill the gap in the Bitcoin futures, right? So I'd be mindful of that. We haven't filled it yet, but it's underway, right? So we got into the gap, but it's not filled. Not filled until we get up, right about here, till we get up to this, where we get that 60 from that first day. Well, it's all from the day we had this drop off, right? So the futures weren't open over the weekend, so you get this big gap, right? So they're working on filling it now. So could that be 1, 2? Well, yeah, of course it could be. Could be. I sure would want to see a big 3 come out of here. This is going to need to get some big legs. Right now, again, we break the sell side algo from this pivot to this pivot. We get up here, we start to run. Now I'd be leaning much more into the idea, okay, per the bull count, we've got something else going on here, and funky as it may be, okay, 1, 2, there goes my 3. All right, I'd trade the 4 into the 5. Here, again, I didn't add here. All right, so what am I doing? No, shit, 19. God, I'm just rusty. Day of moving, I'm completely out of touch with the market. Okay, let's get over here to the bull count, right? So this is where I left it last Friday. Off of the possibility here that there was some technical confluence here, so a few interesting things that had happened here, and for an Elliottician that is looking for a bullish alternative, because as I said last week, I think we can all agree that this is an impulse right here, right? So now, at what degree, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. I know it's a little hard to see with the volume profile on there, but that is an impulse. So if that's an impulse and we're not done yet, per the alternate count where it's 3, 4, 5, and we're done, is there another way we can interpret this to maintain a bullish count here coming off of this 4? Well, as we talked about last week, one possibility here is it was not a popular count, right? I got a lot of pushback on this. That we had a 1, we had the A, we'd gone into a WXY into an expanded B, and we came down for the C, right? So the correction looked like that. A little unusual, but in an impatient market like this, in a technical event here, it made sense, right? You could see it. So this is, again, not long-term Bitcoin, but trading Bitcoin. There was a trade here. Now, per the Elliott count, you would be looking at the 1, right? So you'd pull up the length of the 1. Well, here's the algo play that's already been realized. So buying at the 50, up we go. They get their target here, slight front run on the target, and look at the reaction. So we know this is an algorithm that participated here. But if this is an ABC and we're trying to identify the fib retracement of the 2, you would stick with that pivot, knowing that the algorithm doesn't care about an Elliott count, right? It's just going to go dominant to dominant, right? So we looked at this last week. So if we go swing low to swing high, what do we do? We 50 to the tick, and then I drew this in last week. All I'm doing is just drawing I'm just using the volume profile with fixed range to say from swing low to swing high. Let me see where the volume is. So what I'm looking for is the point of control, and look at the overlap there. So while we did have this little, I think this was Friday last week, where we had put in this pivot, right, and we had a little bit of a bounce. I mean, there was enough here to support the idea of taking a small bite there, and I think I was rather specific about encouraging that as a small bite rather than a big, significantly levered up position. There just wasn't enough there, and the other count is just as valid. But there was a little trade there. So I think I suggested to be a buyer under 48. That's what my target was. Now we're already up to 56, right? So it's a decent trade. At this point, I kind of wish I had taken more of it. But that said, we're not out of the woods yet. So even if you're in the bullish count, and this is how you're interpreting it, right? We're still got that to get through, right? So just as I labored on about that, you got to be mindful of that. You see the prior pivot here is splitting the golden zone. So can we get through that? Well, if we're going up, right, if we've got this underway and we're going up to visit this target, right? Remember the 50 being right here, you can't see it, right? So the algorithm that bought here has this as its target. And all of these pivots have been technical, right? This was a 50, this was a golden zone. Now we're back to another 50, right? Leaving the Elliott out of it. Right? It shouldn't surprise you at all, right? This is golden zone. Oh, pardon me, this was the 50, right? You can see it. This was the 50. Right here, from this pivot to here, front run on the golden zone. Look at the two targets. All right, so the fact that we would come back down here and tag a 50 from the new pivot shouldn't be terribly surprising. It's 50 to the tick. I mean, within a tick or two, depending on your exchange. Excuse me, nice looking trade for a short-term, relatively small-sized trade. Sorry, guys. God, I'm out of practice. Take a week off. I can't even get through it without coughing. And I have nothing to drink near me. Okay, so we'll just soldier on. 1, 2. This is the alternate. The 4 is in. The next degree, we're seeking the 5, right? So we're seeking the 5 up here at this degree. So we're just working through this impulse via a running flat, right, with an expanded B. So if that's the 2, up we go, right? We know there's potentially big targets up here. Let's take that up even higher. Let's go to primary and put that, oh shit, let's put it in this pink. Okay, so we got a big 5 up here. So if that's the 3, 4 at that degree, and this is 1, 2, well, lots of leg room up here. Lots of potential. Sorry, guys. Now I'm at 108. I got to double check it. Yeah, well, now we're at 108. If we're going to complete up there, I'm not in log, right? So 1, 2, seeking the 3 up here. Well, all right, so what have I got here? I've got also a potential corner pocket. All right, so if that holds out, right, the problem when they go that long is that you've got this target here. But again, doesn't mean don't take the trade. It's just you don't get as much runway, right, before you get there. I mean, this could get there by the end of the day. Right, what would that be? 59? That might be a little overly ambitious, but it certainly could get there this weekend. Now your 80% is realized. But don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Getting the 80%, right? So that's the qualifier off of why to take that trade. But we could do this and then, back here. I mean, that median line. Oh God, if you look at Ethereum, right, that the framing of the trend has been spectacular. So that median line will continue to be a magnet for the market, right, as algorithms use it. So this heading towards this target here at 73. Well, that's not likely to be the 3, right? If we were to, if we were to get this, if that's the 1, that's the 2, right? If this algorithm gets its target, well, then now we're starting to get really bullish because now that's not going to be the 3. That's likely to be the 1, 2 of the 3. Now we're pushing 100K, right? If this at this degree, if that's going to be realized, all that scenario is still right there and in play. And is this the kind of thing you'd look back at and, if you didn't take that trade or if you just saw this, fuck, how did I miss that? Right, so that wasn't that radical of a thought, right? So, I mean, if you're an Elliottician, there's only so many ways you could have interpreted that, right? If you're still looking for the bull run to continue, either the major top was in per the other count, right? So the one we just looked at, a significant top was in. Or if we were going to carry on and this was going to hold as the 3, 4 at that degree, I mean, this was the only alternative that was really reasonable rather than some hideous force fit to get that thing to play, right? So if it was going to bounce, this was a very solid area to be looking for that bounce to happen. Now, again, as I said, we're not out of the woods yet because this could easily, we could still get our 50% here, tag the median line and head down. Because if that were to happen, if we were to get that, right, and if I just play this down here, right, where's the target? Right, so if this is going to come up here, and maybe this does something like this, right? Let me get up here, we go 786. If it's a B wave, we could have another expanded. But if we're going to come up here, let's say we miss this here, and if we get up here, I mean, that certainly doesn't mean, bulls are in control and we're off to put in new highs. We could bang our heads here on this algorithm here with its target right down here, right? I mean, you can't see it, right? I have to wiggle it, right? Do you see that? It's right between it's right in the middle of the golden zone, right? Or just a hair past the 618. So you can see that path, and then this could still potentially play. A WXY into the B. I mean, the more bearish thought would be this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if we break this pivot, then the whole idea of this being an expanded flat, well, that all breaks down. But you could certainly see an ABC playing in here. So maybe we get a double, right? We get some sort of a double combo. So it's WXYXZ. Hard to tell right now because we just don't know. And that's certainly knowing how Bitcoin loves the golden zone. You look here and you got this low volume node and you got prior structure. This would not surprise me at all. Now we're down to 42-ish. I'd be just as bullish. Oh, can I do it? Probably not. Here. Golden corner. As I often say. Why would you not take that trade? Why would you not take that trade? If offered, well, you don't have to wonder what I'd be doing. Emphasis, if offered, right? Right now, we're working off of this. Right, so until we see what happens here, I wouldn't be adding, right? That's not a great place to add, right? Right in front of the golden zone from the all-time high. So if you're not already long, you're a bit late to the party. So you're going to have to wait and see. This is, again, is that going to be 1-2? It's a bit of a stretch as we just looked at it. If it does kick out of here, and we're going to need something big, I don't think the next trade is there until you get the 3. The 3 is in, the 4 starts, and you can trade the 4 into the 5, right? Now, again, what is if we were to get that? Is that going to be the 3 or the 1 of the 3? Makes it kind of interesting. So there's 30 minutes of a lot of talk without giving you much to well, I suppose hopefully giving you a few things to think on, how we got to those conclusions. But in terms of where the next trade is, I don't even, even, shit, if I went down, let's try a 30 minutes to see. It's not real pretty. I mean, the ABC here, okay, that's something. Let's take this off. Let's get some of this stuff off. Coming right off the 50 to the tick. That's not quite good enough for me to really love it, to think, okay, well, could be, right? So I can analyze and go, 1, 2, could be 3, 4, 5. Maybe that's the 1, right? So if we go back to our original count, if that's 1 and that's 2, and we're going 3, 4, 5, now that's way too big. Let's micro. 1, 2, okay, 1, 2, maybe 3's underway, but I got to see that, right? We know the golden zone's right here. I got to see that break substantially and close above it. Get off of that. Come into that 3. I suppose there's a trade there. So you could think of it this way, right? If you're just jonesing for a trade, you could think of this as a 3. Get a little 3 here, and you could go into try and get the 5 of the 3. Right, for you Deegans that like to get that, into that very small, you're not trading the 5 minute. Well, there's a trade there. If you're jonesing for a trade, it's not a trade I would pursue. I don't need to get every little pivot. I'm kind of curious to see how this all resolves, right? And I think we all have to just kind of watch here a little bit and look for signs of more significant movement beyond this. All right, so there's 31. I'm gonna wrap up here with a look at. Let's look at Bitcoin D, and then we'll look at Total 2. Okay, Bitcoin D, again, you look at that and you go, come on, right? It can't be. There's an algorithm there. It can't be. Can it? Well, all right, would this have any significance? Right? I wouldn't ignore it. Right? You get a golden corner. We know we have a target. Right? Is Bitcoin D going up to that kind of a level? We're going up to 80%. I don't know that I would bank on that, but I'm going to pay attention to that, just like I'm keeping an eye on the weekly or the Bitcoin. But that's interesting. Note we tap into it, right? Not the 618. It goes into the golden zone. We get a little reaction. Now, does that mean it's going to hold? Of course, right? I wouldn't make that claim, but this is interesting, right? Let's just leave it at that. It's interesting that we get that reaction there, and then Total 2. All right, for you alt bulls. 1, 2. All right, so I'm in log scale here. So if we pull from that as a proposed low for the 4, get it right on that pivot. All right, 127, 138. Right, second most common target for a 3. It's kind of a straight rip up on that, but the correction here is pretty clean. ABC, we get into the proposed 4 here. Looks like we've got more to run here. So alt bulls, right? Would be very encouraging. I'm just terrible with that today. That you might be looking for something like that. Total 2 to get up to 1.3, 1.35 trillion. Interesting, right? So let's take that back to an 8 hour and get all that in. COVID low. Alt's a screaming. So there you go. All right, enough to chew on there. I think right. I think perhaps next Friday we'll have. Let's hope we have more resolution. We're not just going to go sideways, right? Which is certainly possible. We could just stay in this congestion zone here. But if we're going to go, all right, let's not confused here. We could stay here for a while. We could chop. sideways, right? Wouldn't be terribly surprising. But we know we have a technical pivot to work from. So based off of that, what comes next? We at least we know we know where the algorithm is working, right? We know they use that. We know they use that. We know they use that. Right, so what are they going to use next? Right, we'll have to wait and see the reaction. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it there. I've got a house full of boxes I'm still buried in. Plenty of work to do this weekend, but should be back to regular schedule next week. So members, we'll see you on Monday to look through your alt selections and the counts that you posted. YouTube subs, keep an eye out. We're going to do some live streams coming up early part of next month here. We just got to get a little more set up and get clear on how we're going to do it. Okay, with all that said, I wish you guys a good weekend. Members, again, appreciate your patience, and we'll see you guys next week.